Yo, today about to be reacting to car guys don't deserve fast cars. Then who deserves the fast cars? Who's supposed to drive them? Grandmas? But let's see what he's talking about.
The craziest part of male puberty is the canon event where you feel like you absolutely need to own a car with an obscene amount of horsepower. You might not even know what 300 horsepower feels like. You might not even own a car. You might not even have a license. But for some
I mean, this was being pushed around. That's what's cool. Therefore, that's what the kids gonna go for. People fall victim to it all the time, you know.
reason, at some point from age 16 to 20, you feel like a GT3 is slow because it has only 500 horsepower.
What?
And that you need an M5 CS tuned to 800
Only
horsepower.
500 horsepower is crazy. That's a lot of horsepower.
Craziest part about this is that the usual justification that you come up with for what kind of horsepower makes a car fast is that whatever number you just came up with in your head just sounds nice. Wait, what? Like, you mean the exhaust sounds better with more power? No, some of these kids seriously just think having 800 horsepower just sounds like a nice number of horsepower to have.
Hell no. Imagine having 800 horsepower as a daily. You know how much gas you gonna blow through? Fuck that. You know how many lives you put in danger with 800 as your daily? Not a street race, not even a track race. Come on, bro.
Weird, that's an actual response I've heard from people my age and younger.
Hi guys, I'm Shmi and you're watching Vinstagram.
I've said this before and I'll say it 1,000 times again. 500 horsepower is more than enough for most human beings. 400 horsepower with the correct gearing will take you to 200 miles per hour. And 350 horsepower in a light car with a good suspension and a nice power to weight ratio will gap the life out of a 600 horsepower car that weighs 4,500 pounds. If you live in South Carolina and took an interest in state politics, you might remember my late uncle, Senator John Scott. The reason I bring this up is because he was well known in the community for liking cars. Unc was a bona fide car guy if I ever knew one. One of my earliest car related memories was riding his C3 Vet as a toddler. It was a short memory with not much information beyond getting in because I couldn't see above the dashboard. But every time I saw Uncle Lee, small talk turned into deep conversations about cars. We'd always get around to the subject of my Mustang. I was daily driving a Mustang GT at the time. And he'd always be like, man, what you gonna do with that Mustang? And I'd always say something along the lines of, man, I'd love to do a built 302 capable of 8,000 RPMs and hopefully make like 450 horsepower. Or I'd tell him about the latest German car to come out with more than 500 horsepower. And while he always daily drove a German car with whichever had the most reliable drivetrain, which was usually a Mercedes with a naturally aspirated V6, he was a staunch classic American car guy. He'd scoff at the idea of a 400 plus horsepower Mustang, and he'd scoff even harder at the newest, fastest German super sedan. He'd be like, man, why all y'all young boys want to go so fast? I'm like, 400 horsepower isn't even fast. There are cars out there with 700 horsepower. Those aren't even the fastest cars out. Dudes are tuning GTRs and stuff to make 2,000 horsepower.
Just blew up the engine, cuz. Was it worth the horsepower?
He'd be like, I don't even know what the hell a GTR is. Wait, in a street car? Yeah! Unfortunately, he would never live to see the day that I would finally wrap my head around the idea that the average person cannot handle a car with that kind of power at full tilt, or why someone would even want a slower car. As I got older though, I slowly started to understand. I remember in high school one day, I was geeking out over a 458, and one of my friends who wasn't even really into cars like that tried to tell me, why would you even spend that much money on a car when you could spend $60,000 on a Hellcat and get 700 horsepower? That's all you
So you gonna choose a Hellcat over this right here?
over a 458, and one of
You gonna choose a Hellcat over that? That's true nigga behavior.
friends who wasn't even really into cars like that tried to tell me, why would you even spend that
I'd
much money on a
choose that
car when
over
you
a
could spend
Hellcat
$60,000 on a Hellcat and get 700 horsepower? That's all you need. It's a better car for less money. Damn, a Hellcat was really $60,000 when I was a freshman in high school. That was actually a really good value back then. But to a guy like that who really isn't into cars, and I bet he likes Teslas now, it's hard to explain why Ferrari could at least subjectively be the better option, even when you get less power per dollar, especially when you hadn't driven one quite yet. But even then, I understand how a car sounds, how a car handles, how a car looks, how the effort that went into designing the aerodynamics, how the build quality and the materials used in making the car could justify the price you pay for such an experience. Geraldo, if you're watching this, please tell me you at least understand this concept a little bit more now. By the time I was 21, I was working at an exotic car dealership, and I was getting a lot of seat time in cars I was talking about. M5s, M4s, Hellcats, V8 AMGs, 911 turbos, GT3s, Maseratis, Lamborghinis, Aston Martins, you name it. I specifically remember the point where I was driving a 911 turbo cab, which made about like 540 horsepower to all wheels. I mustered up the courage to finally see what the gas pedal felt like when it touches the floor behind it, where I actually scared the shit out of myself and finally had that point where I realized that much power, especially combined with that much low end torque, should honestly not be accessible to the average.
Ain't gonna lie, I'd be scared to go drive that car. As an employer and as a test drive, bro, I'd be so scared. Anything can happen, bro. That car damn near worth more to your life at that point. boy.
Day, I literally had to text my Uncle Lee after I got off work and let him know that he was right. That 300 horsepower was definitely enough for most cars. He just hit me back with a quick yep. Like he was just expecting me to eventually understand what he was trying to tell me, and all it took was a little bit of seat time. Losing traction
I
is
feel like people that get excited over the horsepower number are typically though they supposed to be the ones that's out there racing. If you're not racing, like street racing, then why do you need that much horsepower? You know what I'm saying, bro? That's how I see it. It took me time to
that first
realize
time you
that
do
as
it.
well.
It's a new sensation and you just don't know what to do. And luckily I had the sense to hold the steering wheel straight and let off the gas. Hell, maybe even hit the brakes if it's safe. But it seems like a lot of people who own these kinds of vehicles can't even seem to do that. I mean, in some situations it might actually be better to stay in the gas if you know what you're doing, and I'll touch on that throughout the latter half of the video. But when you get to a certain speed, and this speed is different depending on the kind of road you're on and how much traffic there is, there's so much information you have to take in and actively think about in order to avoid obstructions and maintain traction while driving at a higher speed. And this information is being fed to you
I
via
wouldn't
your
be
eyes,
driving
the
as
steering
fast on this
wheel,
road,
seat you're
bro.
sitting in, and the G-forces being exerted on your body. The average human brain can't keep up with all this information beyond a certain speed, which again changes based on conditions. It's why doing 100 down the interstate in the left lane might be safe, but doing 45 downtown might be
Catastrophic.
My energy bill dropped from
indeed.
$150 to $50
Hey man, I'm
by
gonna get
doing
an ad
this.
block when I get
My
monetized.
friends
Don't
laughed
worry
at me
about
when
it.
I spent 40
stupid. But that experience in the Porsche made me think though. All these kids on the internet saying 500 horsepower is slow, a GT3 is slow, a Scat Pack is slow, were probably just like me. They've probably never floored it in a car with more than 300 horsepower, and they've probably never driven a car like that through a challenging curvy road before. They've only seen people do it on the internet, and because the car isn't moving as fast as a car with 7, 8, 900 horsepower, and their only experiences with these cars is in Forza, they have no real sense of how fast that kind of car
Forza.
is. And when every YouTuber is trying to build a car beyond that kind of power and chasing 4 digits, I see how 700 or 800 horsepower just becomes the standard for what is a decently quick and powerful car. In reality though, most people, including a lot of the owners of these cars, cannot handle this kind of power.
Then you gotta think, and it's wet outside, so he's probably speeding and then hydroplaned into that garbage truck. But no, then you gotta take into the fact that it's more than just horsepower. You gotta worry about the weight of the car, how the car handle, all that extra stuff. Like, okay, look, I got a Mustang EcoBoost. Cool, it ain't the fastest car, it ain't the slowest. My cousin, he got a Jeep Cherokee. He think because he has a V8 in his car that his car gonna beat mine. But my car is way lighter than his, and mine is built for racing. You know what I'm saying? It's levels to this shit.
Why we see salvage title cars with 800 horsepower as often, if not more often, than we see salvage title cars with 300 horsepower, with 200 horsepower. And some of them will have like not even 1,000 miles on them, proving that they didn't even have that much experience in that kind of car, which is probably why they crashed trying to drive a car that hard. This is why usually when people say a car with 400 horsepower is slow, it's normally someone who's never put their foot to the floor in something with more than 300 horsepower, or it's someone who actually owns and races cars with upwards of 800 horsepower. Often upwards of 1,000 horsepower, who have the necessary driving experience, who have the necessary reflexes for such a car.
This
And
is crazy, bro. This right here, all that horsepower, bro.
1,000
in
horsepower,
this
who have the
bad
necessary
weather,
driving
that shit's
experience,
scary.
who have the
Not
necessary
gonna lie.
reflexes for such a car, and at this point are just desensitized to anything slower than that, which fair enough. I think that's honestly just doing a disservice to yourself though, because not being able to enjoy a 150 horsepower car, a 200 horsepower car, is really just, as a car guy, just being able to enjoy less cars now. You're limiting the breadth of cars that you can actually enjoy as a car guy, which is honestly just sad. But it's usually one of those two. It's never in between. I never hear supercar guys saying 400 horsepower is slow. I never hear guys who own 400 horsepower cars saying 400 horsepower is slow. The only person who I know who I'll let tell me 400 horsepower is slow is one of my repeat clients who has literally won Texas 2K before. He's in a new 1,000 horsepower GTR or Huracan every month and currently owns a 2,000 horsepower GTR. Other than people who actually race these kinds of cars without totaling them, I seriously don't think most people have what it takes to drive cars at full tilt that possess a power to weight ratio beyond a certain level. In the state of South Australia, in Australia obviously, I had to make that clear before the Europeans came in the chat like, do Americans even know where that is? But in South Australia, you have to get a U-Class license that allows you to drive UHPVs or ultra high powered vehicles. This means that if a car exceeds a power to weight ratio of 276 kilowatts or 300,
that's understandable. That's just like how you would have to get a license, because cars are like weapons. So it's like you have to register your hands if you a pro boxer, or you have to get a license to carry a gun. It's the same thing. But
76 horsepower per metric ton or 2,205 pounds, then you need a U-Class license to drive it. This essentially means you need to at least have the C-Class license, which is the basic license needed to drive a car like our D-Class license here in the States. Then take their online course that includes basic driver education that you should probably be aware of in high-performance driving situations in order to obtain a license that allows you to drive a car that can put down a rounded up 0.17 horsepower per pound of weight. Now, before y'all get up in arms, it's actually kind of hard to reach this limit. Not as many cars and not as many owners as it may sound like are going to be affected. For reference, if we take a G80 M3 Competition X Drive and divide its 510 horsepower by its slightly obese 3,990 pounds of weight, you still end up with a car that makes just over 0.13 horsepower per pound, which is still below the legal limit for what qualifies as a UHPV in Australia.
See, bro,
let's do another.
So much math to I didn't even know you had to do math like that to have a C-Class license.
If we take a Charger that has 707 horsepower and divide that by like 4,500 pounds that it weighs, BBW big back ass car, even though it has 200 more horsepower, it still falls just below that limit at 0.15 horsepower per pound. Now, if you take something like a C8 Z06, which has similar horsepower to a Hellcat but is also significantly lighter and do the math, you're outside of that limit, which means you would have to get the U-Class license. Good lord, I gotta take these off. I cannot wear this with my contacts in my eyes as well. I got a headache now. Having driven a C7 Z06 before, which also falls outside of that limit, I absolutely think you need a special license to drive that car. That's one of those cars that's just waiting on you to feel too confident.
Honestly,
it wants
bro,
you to.
My next car,
You need a special license to drive that car.
If I don't get like an Audi S8 or S7, then I'm gonna get a Corvette. The problem being I have a family, so I can't get too many sports cars because I have to drive around my family, and that's just gonna sit there and kick up dust.
That's one of those cars that's just waiting on you to feel too confident. It wants you to die. I will not drive a C7 Z06 for the foreseeable future, even for free. If you give me one, I'll trade it in for the cleanest E92 M3 I can find. Even when you consider that the Challenger Hellcat weighs a bit less than the Charger Hellcat that just barely fell inside the weight limit but makes the same power, you would then need the U-Class license to drive the Challenger Hellcat but not the Charger Hellcat. So when you consider these numbers and think about cars like a 296 GTB, a Revuelto, a Dodici Cilindri, it's not even a question. Just go get the license. Those are the cars that they were targeting with this kind of legislation anyways. While the Australian government can be criticized about a lot of things when it comes to its citizens' autonomy, this is a rare Australian W. If anything, I think they need to be more stringent. I think they should lower that power to weight ratio to like 0.1 horsepower per pound, which would include cars like M3s, Scat Packs, Mustang GTs, the usual suspects. Then make the.
So you think, okay, that's Australia. So you think we got to get a special? I mean, okay, that yeah. I agree with you there, cause some people get behind the wheel, don't know what they doing. I understand. I get you.
Requirement like 20. Then make people take a one-day HPDE-esque course that would also include lane discipline on the interstate. Make it through the government, which would probably make it a bit of a headache, but would hopefully get the price of an HPDE course down to below $1,000. And that's something I would honestly happily take to drive high-performance vehicles on the road. I know there's probably going to be a group of commenters that are probably like, you're just mad that young teenagers are driving cooler cars than you.
I mean, bro, it makes sense. You should definitely have some type of qualification to drive a car like that, just like you would need a Class B to drive a box truck or a Class A to drive a semi truck. It's different classes to drive in. Class D to drive a regular car. I understand.
Can't afford it. No.
I understand.
No, that's not what I said. Because if I see a teenager driving an F350 dually or a 911 Carrera 4S or something, then hey, more power to you. The difference being is very hard to lose traction at a high speed in a vehicle that either weighs 6,000 pounds or has less than 400 horsepower and puts the power down to all four wheels. It's also easier to stop in something like a 911 than a Hellcat. Obviously, I'm a car guy. I like driving in a fast, spirited fashion as much as the next guy, maybe even more. But I was 18 with a V8 sports car once. I had friends who were also in that age range with sports cars, and I know how we were driving. We literally had one friend who could not keep a car longer than a year. Not because he was bored with his current car, not because he needed a new car for practical reasons, but because he could not stop totaling cars, and most of these cars were making less than 200 horsepower. The only
Man, that man insurance is looking crazy. What?
reason bro has ever gotten a new car is because he totaled the last one. I don't even know how he's still insured. And you think it's a good idea for a guy like that to be legally allowed to buy a car that puts 600 horsepower to the rear wheels? Be for real. Also, if the cops catch you at a takeover, running from the cops, or you cause an accident that does a significant amount of damage, you should get this license revoked and you have to go back and take the course again. I don't think I quite mentioned how.
I mean, running from the cops, that's a felony. But getting caught at it, okay. Takeovers are different from car meets. I definitely agree with that, because the motherfucker be shutting down a whole intersection to do donuts. That's why men live
fun you can
shorter
actually
than
have
women.
in a slow car either. I drove a C8 Corvette Stingray and a Honda S2000 in the same 7-day period recently, and the Honda was leaps and bounds more fun than the C8. I genuinely cannot fathom wanting a C8 over an S2000 if I can also have a daily driver. Smaller, lower, lighter cars allow you to get a better feel for your inputs, to the point where, you know, when you're driving a rear-wheel drive car through a corner and like if you stay in the gas, it compresses your suspension, keeps your suspension stiff, and kind of like just pushes your nose through the corner a little bit. It was to the point where I let up halfway through a winding corner and the nose just dipped out off in the other direction. Relative to the S2K, you don't really get that much of a feeling in the front end of the C8 Stingray. And for a car that's mid-engine and rear-wheel drive, the nose felt kind of soft and you don't get too much feedback from your inputs. At least not as much as the S2K. And this is dangerous for a first-time sports car owner, because if you don't know what your car is doing under stress like that, you won't know what you need to do when you actually need to get a grip and keep yourself out of a barrier. This is the same reason why someone might enjoy a Cayman over a 911 or an Integra over an NSX, and why most people will be better off with the slower but more engaging, more fun option. Not to mention, you can actually put your foot to the floor in cars like this and use the car to its full potential on public roads while still being aware of your surroundings. And in doing this in a slower car, you're only pushing the limits of your spatial awareness and your reflexes. You're not going outside of your abilities. And I'm not even trying to be a dictator or anything. I don't even think this will stop anyone who is genuinely skilled and responsible enough to drive these kinds of cars from driving these kinds of cars. If anything, it'll keep
Okay. All right, look. I definitely hear you with needing the special license or whatever. Cool. But it's a lot of motherfuckers out here driving strikers. Especially in Atlanta. They gonna go steal a Hellcat and take it. They don't even got a license. You know what I'm saying? Then they might have it, but it ain't necessary. They learn as they go. So what would be the point of getting a license like that if they just gonna steal cars as easy as they do? Hey, that's a great question.
drivers in cars that are within their means of control. It would encourage car enthusiasts to want to become better, more knowledgeable drivers. And it wouldn't even prevent ownership of cars like M340is, C43s, RT Chargers, and certainly not BRZs, Honda S2000s, or Civic Type Rs for anyone. But I think this will make car meets safer, it will make the interstate safer, and the public perception of car guys who like to drive in a spirited fashion will be a more respectable one. This is probably going to be a short video because it's kind of hard to explain this concept to someone whose only knowledge of big power is from Forza and GTA 5. Not to mention, when you crash in those games, it's not a big deal. Hitting curbs, street signs, and lampposts at 120 are inconsequential. In real life, that kind of incident will slice your car in half. People are going to drive past the incident, see a bunch of shrapnel and plastic shreds on the ground, and be like, damn, that used to be a car? I think the main takeaway I want y'all to have is to just respect the vehicle and the amount of power you have. If you're really curious, go find a road that cuts through a field in the middle of nowhere, or find an empty parking lot and learn what losing traction feels like. It's a weird feeling the first time. You're not going to know what to do. Maybe take a friend who actually is experienced in like drifting and doing burnouts and stuff like that. But the more you lose traction in a low risk environment, the more comfortable you'll be when your car breaks loose. The more in control you'll feel when it happens. The more you'll be able to feel it about to happen and prevent it. Non-automotive media and driver safety courses like to call losing traction losing control, but in reality it's just losing traction. Control is a state of mind. If you have enough experience from losing traction in that low risk environment, when you lose traction in a high risk environment, you'll know what to do and how to properly control your vehicle to maintain safety. This is how we see guys like Shafe can do things in other people's cars and not wreck them. This is how Formula Drift exists. This is how in more conventional motorsports formats, people lose traction all the time, yet they don't spin out. Even in regular driving conditions, it'll just help you out more. Few things piss me off more than people who drive super slow with their hazards on when it's pissing down rain. Like, motherfucker.
What's that song
I mean, bro,
about?
I ain't mad at
Gangsters
nobody
moving
that's
all
playing the
sneaky
sick.
like
Real
if it's
G's
just
move
rain,
in
I'll see if
silence like
it's snow.
lasagna. You wrote it.
what? For real? Spin that.
Now playing on
No,
Amazon
I'm gonna
Music.
get an ad block when I get monetized. Don't worry about it, y'all. I'm thinking it's
What's
gonna be
new with
one
Google
ad.
Ads?
They gave me 2 ads back
Google
to back.
AI
I'm
powers
definitely about to
campaigns
get
that
one
work
soon.
for you.
I feel it.
Turn your wipers on and drive. Your brake lights are designed to be visible through the rain. If you have all-season tires, they're literally designed for conditions like this. Everyone's so scared of losing traction, but if you know what losing traction feels like before you end up in a situation like this, it shouldn't be an issue. I drive.
No, let me tell y'all real quick. So I was driving my Mustang. I got 2 cars. I got a little Trapper, a little Ford Fusion. I got a Mustang. So it was one day, I think, where was I on my way to? I think I was on my way to work. It was pissing raining outside. I decided to drive my Mustang, cause why not? I didn't know it was raining, cause I have to literally get outside to see what the weather looking like before anything, or I could just look out the window. But I just wake up and just jet straight out. Anyways, I'm on a highway. I guess I go too fast. I wasn't even going that fast, but my car just lose traction for no reason. So now I'm on the highway. My back. All right. So look, I'm driving straight. Then the back of the car, like it go like that. Boom, 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 boom. Right. Then I straighten it out. Yup, 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 yup. Then the other side go boom, 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 boom. I go yup, 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 yup. Like it do that like 2 or 3 more times. Then I'm good. Anyways, that could have ended ugly if I didn't have the wheel. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I'm the best driver I know. Trust.
I would on a dry day when it's pissing down rain. Know why? Because my all-season tires are designed to
And
channel.
the only reason I spun out like that because I needed new rear tires. That's why. So I needed new tires in general. I'm gonna get that at the end of winter though, because I'm not even driving that car, so I'm not really too much focus on it. But yeah.
Water away from the contact patch. When I see a puddle, I already know I'm about to hydroplane. I know what my vehicle does when it hydroplanes, and so just out of habit, I counteract it so I can drive the same speed that I would have been driving if it were dry and still be in complete control. Sometimes that requires that I give it a little bit more power, let it slide, and be confident in the fact that I know what to do when it slides. Sometimes that means that I just need to steer in the opposite direction that it's pulling, and it always means I need to pay the attention. Too many of
And
y'all are on y'all's
I didn't watch a video or read a book to learn that shit. It just came natural instinct. Like I just know what to do in certain situations.
phone, looking around, enjoying the scenery when you need to be aware of what's coming up a few hundred feet ahead
how did
before
you
you even
crash
get
that?
there. And the faster you're driving, the further out you need to be aware and the wider the cone of view becomes of which you need to be aware of. Yes, this can be a mentally tough task to deal with, which is why I said the average driver is not capable of driving these fast cars at full tilt. Not because you're incapable of putting your foot to the floor, not because you're incapable of turning the wheel, but because a lot of people are physically incapable of the reflexes that it takes to react to obstructions, other drivers, and road conditions in a manner that's timely enough to keep you alive and keep your car not totaled. That's why I think a lot of people underestimate the athleticism of race car drivers, especially Formula One, because they think that just because the car goes fast that they can also handle the car going that fast.
I
No,
did that before. Like no, but in the Pontiac, I was racing my guy. That's a story for another day. I'm gonna tell a story time on that. But yeah, I almost died like that because somebody cut in front of me.
People are prodigies. In the same way that being tall will make you a better basketball player, better spatial awareness, faster reflexes, and superior mental endurance will make you a more talented driver. And most people are not blessed with those kinds of skills from a young age, and most people don't end up developing those skills to the level that is needed to drive cars with 800, 900, 1,000 horsepower. These principles can be applied whether you're hydroplaning in the rain, drifting a mountain road, trying to show everyone how cool you are when you're pulling out of Cars and Coffee because your parents didn't give you enough attention as a child, all that. The thing is, it becomes clearer and clearer
No,
that
that's
not everyone
hilarious,
has
bro.
what it takes to control a vehicle in these kinds of situations.
That's
The young
literally what it is. Look at me. My car goes wrong. Oh damn! I muted the shit.
you are, the less likely you are to have that experience. Like I said earlier, I think we could all just bear to respect how much power our 4,000-pound death machines have a little bit more, and understand the fact that the gas pedal is not just a button that makes you move forward in a straight line in a controlled fashion.
Hey man, that was a very educational, entertaining video. Very relatable video. Get this shit off my screen. But no, let me know what y'all think down in the comments below. Is he is he right? Should car guys have slower cars? No. Me personally, I feel like that goes to a certain extent because actual car guys that know what they're doing, that got the wheel, they don't need slower cars. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the people that really be the most in danger are the people that's less experienced. The people that say they want 500-600 horsepower, but yet driving a car with like one something, or driving like a Camry as a daily. Not even Camry. A lot of people don't even be driving that be saying that that's not a lot of horsepower. But let me know what y'all think down in the comments below. I'm gonna catch you niggas in the next one. Yes, sir.